call this meeting of the Committee on Public Safety, Finance, and Policy to order. We do have a quorum present. Before we get to our agenda, just a few things I'll go through. Everyone here today must be seated when in the hearing room. There's no standing or sitting in the walkways or aisles. If you need any accommodations, please let staff know. Signs are not permitted in the hearing room or at the testifiers table and should be left outside. Clapping and other disruptions aren't allowed. And all of the testifiers who have signed up in advance have been provided with a time limit for testimony. Please adhere to these limits or you will be cut off. Similarly, members of the public who choose to testify will also be provided with a time limit. And we do this not to be cruel, but in order to just keep things moving. We have a lot of bills on our agenda, amendments to discuss, member discussion, and bills to vote on, so we just want to get through everything. Before we get to our bills today, we need approval of the March 15th, 2024 meeting minutes. Representative Hewitt, would you like to move the minutes for March 15, 2024?
Madam Chair, so moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. The minutes for March 15, 2024 are approved. The first bill on the calendar for the day is a Chair Gomez bill. This bill is House File 4370. I will move that House File 4370 be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes. And Chair Gomez, I believe that you have an author's amendment, the A1. I will move the A1 amendment. And Chair Gomez, welcome to the committee. And you want to just quickly tell us about the A1 amendment?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Chair. So the A1 amendment just changes the reporting date. This is necessary just because of sort of the way that timing works out in local budgets. Sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes here. So the final levies get certified in cities in December, and so we just wanted to give people a little bit more time to put this report together.
Thank you. Any discussion to the A1 amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. All right, if you would like to tell us about your bill as amended, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So good morning. In the 2023 tax bill, one of the items was a $300 million local aid for public safety that went out to cities, counties, and tribal nations. So 4370 would just require a report about how that money was spent. You know, there were we gave a lot of flexibility in these funds. And so, you know, I think that there is just interest in the legislature in seeing how they were used. And so it's a pretty simple bill, and I would ask for your support.
All right. Do we have anybody from the public who wishes to testify on this bill? Not seeing anybody, and so we can move on now to the A2 amendment. Who will be offering that? Representative Whitty, is that yours? I'm assuming that's yours.
I got it coded wrong. Thank you, Chair Moeller. Thank you, Chair Gomez. And thank you for that historic amount of money that was given. I moved the A1 amendment. Last year's tax omnibus, including $300 million in public safety aid to local communities for police and fire equipment. For some reason, the purchase of armored or tactical vehicles and costs of expanding or improving a police station were excluded as eligible uses for the public safety aid. We all know about the tragic incident in Burnsville, where two police officers and a paramedic were brutally murdered while another was radioing with dispatch begging for more armored vehicles. And less than a month later, when Oakdale police were responding to a domestic call, a man fired at officers who had to take cover behind their squads while they were waiting for an armored vehicle to arrive. These are very real, very recent incidents that demonstrate law enforcement's need for these items. We need to untie the hands of our law enforcement leaders, trust them that they know what they need to keep our communities safe. The A1 amendment adds the language of my House File 4837 to this bill. It makes armored or tactical vehicles and costs of expanding or improving a police station eligible use for public safety aids. I ask for your support, and I ask for a roll call.
Thank you, Representative Whitty. So just for clarity for the record, it's the A2 amendment here, because the A1 was the one we adopted with the date change. So just to be clear, we're talking about the A2 amendment.
Correct.
Okay, great. Chair Gomez, response to the A2 amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Moeller. So we heard this on the floor the other day. I mean, this is a classic solution in search of a problem. There is no law enforcement agency anywhere in the state of Minnesota that received this money that has called us and said, man, we're really having trouble figuring out how to spend it. It's not a thing. It's not happening. This is incredibly permissive. Like, there are some very narrow exceptions to this money, and the things that people are able to spend it on are numerous, and we're going to learn more about it when we get this report back. But I can tell you, despite like protestations, people are spending this money on personnel costs, retention bonuses, like hardware, radios. People are buying vehicles of various kinds with it. I mean, you can spend it on violence interrupters. You can spend it on victim services. You can really spend it on anything. You can spend it on mental health care for first responders. No Republican. Okay, so we had $300 million in public safety aid in the tax bill last year. We had an unprecedented amount of local government aid and county program aid that impacts and helps every single one of your communities. We had a nation-leading child tax credit that's going to cut child poverty by a third. We had property tax refunds for lower-income homeowners and renters that impact all of your communities, and not one Republican voted for this bill. Nobody. So, like, you want to come later after you didn't participate in the process, you didn't vote for the bill, you didn't come, nobody came and said, hey, we want to figure out how, we think there's a way to improve this. There was none of that discussion. So now, a year later, when communities are already making plans for the money, and they're already finding a lot of different ways to use this money to support public safety efforts in their local communities, then we're coming in this moment to politicize something that just doesn't need to be politicized. And we're coming with a classic solution in search of a problem. Nobody's having any trouble spending this money. Nobody's banging down our doors saying, oh, we need to spend this on a tank. We can't possibly spend it on any of the, literally hundreds of other items that we could spend it on in our public safety budget. So I would ask members to vote this down. It's not a serious thing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion to the amendment. Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Whitty, for this bill, for the amendment. I do have some reservation on it, and we talked a little bit about this, but these are assets that are purchased by the community. As a matter of fact, the vehicle that was used in the situation in the south there was a Rosemount vehicle with a Rosemount officer that was involved with it. And I know how important these assets are, but I also see the same thing in any public safety situation, that my concern is that we're not thinking in a regional situation where I don't think we have to have this vehicle parked in every police station. The same with a fire truck. We don't need ladder trucks in every fire department across the state. I'm going to get tons of mails from the fire departments right now. I can feel it coming. But that's where I'm kind of getting caught up on some of this, as to these assets are important and we do need them. But I don't think every single, I think we have to look regionally on this, and it's more than just this aid that came out. I think there could be a more global bill about how we do things. I mean, we've done it together with bulletproof vests for EMS people. We've done it in other areas. I think that we could look at other possible things that we could do together to make sure we have these regional resources that can respond rapidly to these terrible situations. So I don't know which way I'm going on this amendment yet, but I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Representative Hewitt, who are you asking?
Oh, I'm
the
sorry,
question of?
Madam Chair. I was asking the author of the amendment.
Okay, Chair Gomez.
I'm sorry, you asked me a question.
Oh, the amendment, sorry.
I'm sorry.
All right, let's,
Anytime it's a Hewitt situation, it gets bad.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, all right, so let's just do this. We're going to hear member discussion because we're not going to do back and forth like
Oh, okay,
that
I'm
now.
sorry.
But you've asked your question, and then when we do your closing remarks, Representative Whitty, perhaps you can address it at that moment. All right, so next we have Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow. Well, we definitely touched a nerve. I mean, we make a simple ask for a very reasonable and rational, productive request and get accused of politicizing it. That's interesting. Not participating in a process that we've been systemically excluded from. Yeah, that was our choice. This is really simple. Just like on the House floor, we have yet to hear an actual answer for why our police officers and our public safety agencies cannot use these funds for the purpose of armored vehicles or making their stations safer for them to operate in. Not one single reason. We've been given a lot of flowery language about, oh, they have so much money. It's so permissive. Imagine if the grants that we offered to people in need excluded, I don't know, purchasing coats. Really permissive, you can get anything else with the money, the cash that we're handing over to you. But if you buy a coat, that's explicitly excluded. But otherwise, it's really permissive. That's the style of argument that I'm hearing here today. It's absolutely absurd. Retention bonuses? Hey, come get shot. We'll give you a bonus if you survive after 90 days. Recruitment? Violence interrupters? People are getting shot at. The people who we entrust to protect us, to stand between us and bad actors, are getting shot at, crying over the radio, asking for help, and the answer of this body is no. And by the way, be grateful that we allowed you to have money for other things. That's what I'm hearing today. It's been a tough day. 10:45. I mean, I know we're supposed to talk about the amendment in the bill, but religious liberties under attack, vaccinations being forced, and now this.
All right, let's keep it to the amendment.
And all the while with this attitude, this dismissal, this condescension. I'm sick of it.
Representative Frazier.
If I could just thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Gomez, for bringing the bill. Thank you, Representative Whitty, for having this discussion around the amendment. If I could just bring us back a little bit, it's early. My day isn't terrible yet. I hope it doesn't get terrible because it's going to be a long day because I have committee again tonight. But no, when we were having the conversation, and I do recall this vividly because I helped work on the language in this public safety bill, and there were conversations with our police chiefs, there were conversations with our local city council members and mayors, and it was not, as Chair Gomez mentioned, that was not armored vehicles, tactical vehicles. They were not saying, hey, we don't understand. We have to have language that allows us to purchase armored vehicles and tactical vehicles. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they could use local government aid to purchase these assets if they like to. They can still do that if they like to. For example, you could use the public safety, the one-time public, this is a one-time expense, and it was a one-time allocation of $300 million. And I think a lot of the conversations that I've had with folks was to keep in mind that it's a one-time allocation. And we don't know if we're going to do it again. So be mindful of what you're spending it on, and we'll take a look at that. So I'm glad you brought this bill. We'll take a look at what you spent it on, and we'll take a look at needs, and we can reassess if we are able to make an allocation like this again. But it was one time, so people needed to be judicious about how they spent that, so it wouldn't create some type of financial cliff. We didn't want to have that. But they knew they had local government aids they could use for these assets if they needed to purchase them. And even to this point, I have not gotten calls, I have not gotten emails, I have not gotten text messages saying, Representative Frazier, we now need to rethink this because this is an asset that we need to have. And I'm not saying that with any condescension. I'm not saying that. I'm not reprimanding anyone. Those are just the facts. That's just the reality that we're in right now. That is not the request that is happening. Now, I am one of the first ones to say that if we need to purchase assets to provide for community safety, we should do that. But that is just not the outcry that I'm hearing. So I appreciate the conversation around the amendment. I won't be supporting it, but it's because it's not the outcry that I'm hearing. I am hearing outcries about many other things around public safety and community safety, and we should address those, but this is not one that I'm hearing an outcry about. And I think cities, again, with their local government aid, they can purchase these assets they need to, and they have those resources if they want to. And it is similar to what Representative Hewitt said, is that it is more of a regional thing. My city has a vehicle, and it's part of our regional SWAT that we use, and we deploy that asset when necessary, and I know the other cities have it as well. So just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Representative Incan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Gomez. One of the questions that I have while I'm sitting here is why not add this to the list? You listed off a number of things that they can purchase for public safety, but I just don't understand why we're limiting it to not this. It doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, if it's going to potentially save a life, if it's something that somebody could take shelter behind as they're taking rounds in the line of duty. I mean, this isn't a Hollywood movie. Bullets go through those doors. Bullets go through a regular cop car doors. So why are we saying no to this? I just don't understand it. If I could hear somebody tell me why, that would be awesome.
Chair Gomez.
I mean, Representative Frazier just talked about it. I talked about it. I mean, nobody's asking for this. Like, I just, there's no need for it. Police budgets, I guess I can speak only about my own city because I don't know the budgets of other cities across the state as well as I know my own. We spend, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's somewhere between 25 and 30% of our city budget on law enforcement expenses. That's an ongoing expense. It is, you know, in a lot of ways. I mean, it's one of, in times of budget cuts, it's one of the few budget areas that stays consistent because it's a basic function of government to provide for the security of their citizens. You know, when you get a one-time infusion of money like this, and there are a couple of exceptions, I mean, it's just not that hard to, if you want to, if a city really needs to invest in an armored personnel vehicle, or a county does, or a tribe does, and we give them an infusion of cash, like they can find a way to do that. It helps their budget out. But I personally, you know, I mean, there's concern, not just from me, but from a lot of members of the community about militarization of police. And, you know, yeah, you guys can definitely say all you want, but we all get to have our opinions here. And so I'm not speaking for everybody or for my caucus, but it's just, again, it's a solution in search of a problem. It's like these funds are going out. Law enforcement agencies are finding ways to use them to promote public safety, which is what they're supposed to do under the bill. And I just don't see a need for it, I guess, is the answer I'll give you.
Representative Incan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Gomez. I think that probably summed it up as clearly as you can get. The fundamental difference here is that we see public safety and we see our public safety officers as defenders. They're not going on offense. And with insinuations like the militarization of police, that would say the opposite. It's really, really hard to promote public safety when you're getting shot at and you don't have something to defend yourself with. That's what we're asking for here. It just boggles my mind that this has become so overly politicized when it could have just been yep, sure, add it to the list. Our list is already 200 long. Let's add one more to it. But it went sideways. So I genuinely don't understand still, but I think that we found out the difference here.
Representative Grassel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. And that last comment, I'm not even going to dignify with a response. That completely out of line, Madam Chair.
It actually
And-
wasn't out of line. It was an answer to a question, a specific question that was asked.
You continue to attack on law
So,
enforcement,
just
call
a
them
second, I'm talking.
militarized.
I am talking right now. It was not out of line. It was in response to a question that was asked. You might disagree with it, but it isn't out of line. Go ahead.
You talk about mental health and trying to take care of the people on the front lines, the EMS, et cetera, and law enforcement. And this is one thing that would try to help curb some of that mental health need. When you can protect your public servants, when you can protect your people on the front lines, you can protect the people that have to go in to a violent situation, and you don't lose an officer, you don't lose a paramedic, you don't lose a citizen. This is a ask after a horrific event where good people were lost. This is not politicized. This is an ask for another piece of equipment to be added to that list of things you can purchase. That's all it is. And this piece of equipment is to help preserve people's lives. It is not the militarization of law enforcement. It is to help the citizens. It is to protect your people on the front lines in case things get really ugly. Nobody wants that. But to have it a regional thing, to have it a piece of equipment that you can get to, should things get really bad. That's all this is. It's a request. But it's again, the truth comes out here, saying that law enforcement is being militarized. That's a load of garbage, folks, and you know it. Speaking as somebody who has put their life on the line to protect other people and been shot in the line of duty. I didn't ask for anything other than the equipment that was necessary to protect my neighbors. And that's what this is, an ask.
Representative Pinto.
Thanks, Chair. And I was prompted by the comment earlier about the fundamental difference, that somehow this illustrates fundamental difference. And to my mind, the fundamental difference here is that the Democrats fund community safety. We do so in preventative ways, in all kinds of things, homelessness and food security and education, all sorts of things. And we fund community safety in the form of public safety. $300 million. Representative Woody used the word historic. We've heard the word unprecedented, and that is true, to fund community safety with not a single Republican vote. That's the difference between the parties. And I heard Chair Gomez say that in a discussion about this, no request, no law enforcement saying, oh my goodness, we want to have the opportunity to do this, because in fact, we know there's even more need, but my goodness, it's really good that we invested $300 million going to community safety around the state. And you're right, that is the fundamental difference. Thanks, Chair.
Lead Novotny.
Allow me to catch my breath, Chair. Thank you, Representative Whitty, for bringing this. Representative Gomez, Representative Pinto, you just hit the 2 points that prompted us to do this bill to start with, okay? Never mind that you were focused on the armored vehicles. Also included improving safety and security at facilities. We sit in the state a stone's throw away from the only precinct that's ever been lost. We're going to spend millions and millions of dollars to replace something that we just should have never given up to start with. Directly to you, Mr. Representative Pinto, it is exactly that throwing that $300 million phrase in our face that inspired the amendment. Because it's a big deal. We're giving you this money. We'll tell you specifically how you can spend it, and most of the things you can spend it on aren't specifically for public safety. So we want to have that thing, and we point it out. But thank you for saying the loud part aloud. Say the quiet part aloud. Thank you. We appreciate it. That you bring up our points. You make our points for us. This was about the fact that we weren't allowed, nobody said anything. Well, I remember when I was in the conference committee on public safety, and then I said the point about, oh, wait, there were no Republicans on the conference committee for public safety. First time that I know of it in my short time here. When conference committees were going on, there were conversations being had, but we weren't in the room.
Closing remarks, Representative Whitty.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. This is not politics to me. I'm sorry that this has gotten so politicized. This is personal. I lost 3 heroes from my family. And I don't know if you went to the funeral. I don't know if you were there on the day of the incident when we held our first vigil. But we need to be there for our law enforcement, not just on the days of the vigil, not just days of the funeral, but 365. This costs $0. You keep saying this is a solution in search of a problem. I got a video from CARE 11 that will tell you what the officers were looking for at their problem. They're screaming for armored vehicles. Oakdale, we had the same incident. It could be one of your loved ones that they have to go rescue. This isn't just our law enforcement. It's the tools to help them do their job out in the community to keep us safe. And I think it's ironic that we think we're smarter than what law enforcement can do, and that we know what they need to keep our community safe. I have been approached by Plymouth PD that tried to get an armored vehicle. They were looking for money, and it had a 300-gallon tank on the back, and it had a nozzle on top to put out Molotov cocktails, or if someone should light themselves on fire, or for God's sake, they light the whole apartment on fire, and the whole building goes up with victims inside, and your fire department can't go in. They came to me after this, or before all of this happened. I got asked by my sheriff who was concerned. To your point, Representative Hewitt, this would have been a regional vehicle that Plymouth was looking and that each of the departments could put in money for. And this was the easiest way to do the money. But there's no LGA. Lakeville gets no LGA. A lot of cities don't always get the LGA. So to say that we can use that money, but the workarounds, why are we working around hiding where the money's going? Buying vehicles and then using the money for these armored vehicles. I guess I'm a little confused. I saw this as an opportunity to fix something that didn't cost any money. I thought we could come together in light of what's happening. But I do appreciate the discussion, and yeah, like I said, we need to be there 365 days for our law enforcement. Thank you.
Representative Whitty moves the A2 amendment. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Mueller.
No.
Chair Mueller votes no. Vice Chair Feist.
No.
Vice Chair Feist votes no. Lead Novotny.
Aye.
Lead Novotny votes yes. Representative Becker-Finn.
No.
Representative Becker-Finn votes no. Representative Curran.
No.
Representative Curran votes no. Representative Engen.
Yes.
Representative Engen votes yes. Representative Frazier.
No.
Representative Frazier votes no. Representative Grossel.
Yes.
Representative Grossel votes yes. Representative Hollins.
No.
Representative Hollins votes no. Representative Hewitt.
Pass.
Representative Hewitt is passed. Representative Mueller.
Mueller votes yes.
Representative Mueller votes yes. Representative Pinto.
No.
Representative Pinto votes no. Representative Tabke.
No.
Representative Tabke votes no. Representative Whitty. Representative Whitty votes aye. Representative Hewitt.
There being 5 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not prevail. Next, we'll move on to member discussion of the bill. Any discussion to the bill itself? All right, Chair Gomez, closing comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with what Representative Whitty said, like, we need to be present for public safety in our communities 365 days a year. But Chair Pinto talked about what that means to us. What that means to me is something that's really expansive. Public safety doesn't just mean response in times of crisis, although that's part of it. Public safety means going upstream. It means investing in communities. It means doing work that's hard to do healing, to make sure that people who have been through really awful traumatic times are restored to health. It means that when something awful happens in a community, that there is a way to move forward together. And it means like opening our eyes to there being other dimensions to safety in our communities besides, armed response to things. I guess I just want to say, like, on this, I know that we're not talking about the amendment, but since the 90s, there's been this program, the 1033 program from the federal government, which gives military equipment to local law enforcement agencies, like most states in the country. Tens of millions of dollars of, decommissioned military equipment has come into the state of Minnesota. There are a lot of, as we've all kind of talked about, a lot of law enforcement agencies have some of this equipment. They are often regional assets. They're sometimes expensive to maintain. And that's an option that's out there. And so, I just wanted to mention that because it's like we can get into very like narrow views of what it means to provide safety to communities, and our approach is actually a more expansive one. And so, I look forward to seeing the results of this report back to the legislature. I think that we're going to learn a lot from local law enforcement about what they were able to do with, some relatively unrestricted funds, and it will tell us about some of the needs in our communities that aren't being met with other kinds of funding. And so I would appreciate your support for 4370. Thank you.
I renew the motion that House File 4370 as amended be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion prevails. Next on our agenda, is House File 3063. It's a Chair Fischer bill. I will move that House File 3063 be placed on the general register. We do have a couple of authors' amendments as well. The first one is the A3 amendment. I will move the A3 amendment. Chair Fischer, welcome to the committee. Please explain the A3 amendment.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. Thank you, committee. The A3 amendment does a couple of things. It clarifies some of the language out there to make sure it does what we intended to. And more importantly, there was a section that would add cost to it, so we deleted the section that added cost to the bill. So this would be a policy-only bill.
All right. Any discussion to the A3 amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. And then we also have the A4 amendment, and which is also an author's amendment. My understanding is that this was just a technical amendment. Is that your understanding, Chair Fischer?
Yes, Chair Mueller, that is my understanding, that this is a technical amendment.
All right. Any discussion to the A4? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. The A4 amendment is adopted. Now, Representative Fischer, please tell us about your bill as amended.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to present House File 3063. This is a bill that is going to address the situation where DNA is taken in certain situations that was not approved. This addresses a situation where a Minnesota Court of Appeals found something that was taken unconstitutionally. What it does is we correct state statute to take out the language that was not constitutional. In addition, I've got several folks who are willing to testify. Basically, what it comes down to, we've had instances where we had juveniles who had their DNA taken without approval by their parents or by a court warrant, and we found that rather disturbing. So at that, I'll stop, and I know you're short on time, and allow my testifiers to come forward.
Great, thank you. The first one we have signed up to testify is Al Flowers Jr. Or Cynthia Wilson. Come on forward. Yep. Welcome to the committee, and when you get seated, please introduce yourself, and you can begin your testimony.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Wilson, and I'm coming wearing a couple of hats on today. Thank you for having me on this morning. I'm coming as the president of the Minneapolis NAACP and also as a parent. And so I'd just like to read something real quick, briefly if I could. Most law enforcement agencies do not distinguish between juveniles and adults in DNA collection, storage, and access regulations. Our focus is on protection of juveniles and for the transition age youth 18 through 24. Nationally, pre-conviction DNA collection status have generated more attention because an arrestee has not been adjudicated. Some arrestees may not have met with an attorney or appeared before a judge before they relinquish their DNA. Using the arrestee's DNA sample as an identification tool for the crime they were arrested for does not make sense because probable cause must be established for the individual to be arrested to begin with. Moreover, linking an arrestee to other unsolved cases violates the due process model in which the juvenile should be considered innocent until found guilty. So that being said, I'm here in representation of our black and brown communities. This highly impacts our babies. And what we're saying is that this bill will serve as protection to black and brown youth who may, for whatever reason, get arrested. Maybe they were in the park doing some things that they don't have any business doing. Maybe they were in the alley doing some things they didn't have any business doing. But to take their DNA sample and hold that on file criminalizes these babies for up until they're adults. We find that to be very, very alarming. We have had a lot of parents come to our office. Am I up for time?
Yeah, you are over.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, President Wilson.
All right, no problem.
You can conclude. That would be great.
My conclusion is just this. It's our hope that you would support this bill as it would protect our young black and brown babies. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Come on forward and introduce yourself for the committee, and you can begin your testimony. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. My name is Anthony McMorris Rice, co-chair of the Young People Task Force in substitution for A.J. Flowers. When should DNA be collected, especially for juveniles? A DNA sample should not be collected from a body of person without the parents' or person's consent unless authorized by a search warrant or by a judicial order as provided in subdivision B of this standard. Minnesota law requires that those convicted of a felony, those released from prison after serving a felony sentence, those felons whom the state accepts through an interstate compact, and those charged with certain predatory felonies to submit a DNA. In situations where juveniles have not been convicted yet they have or even been charged, DNA should not be collected by any body or agency, especially if they hasn't served or been in a facility, juvenile facility or so have you. So with that being said, it is very impactful, especially to the black and brown community, that DNA is being taken without the parent consent or a search warrant. When things have been brought up, maybe a crime or anything like that has been committed or have thought to be committed. And with that, thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else from the public wishes to testify on this bill? All right. come on forward. Is there going to be anybody else? We're going to, all right, so this will be our last testifier on the bill. Welcome back to the committee. We're going to give you 2 minutes like we gave the other testifiers. So please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
So my name is Lisa Clemens. I'm a community activist, and I was one of the first people who recognized that this was happening to juveniles. When I speak of juveniles, I mean up to the age of 17. I do not go beyond that, so I need to be very clear. We have to acknowledge that young kids, a lot of which have IEPs, and they don't even, understand that you're taking DNA from them. So I got called into this case. When I talked to the young man, he had no clue that when they put that stick in his mouth, they were taking DNA. So I do think for kids up to 17, need to be clear again, up to 17, that we need parent consent and a judge to issue an order for that.
Thanks for your testimony. We'll move on now to member discussion to the bill. Lead Novotny.
Maybe we can short circuit this one, Chair, and I agree with most of the testifiers here. Have just a quick question for Chair Fischer, just to clarify something. You said the unconstitutional gathering of the DNA evidence with the search warrant?
No.
Chair Fischer, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Mueller, Representative Novotny. The Minnesota Court of Appeals found that it was unconstitutional to require a person who has not been convicted to provide it unless there was a court order or if there was adult permission given. And that was back in 2006. What we're doing is going in and changing the law to make sure that we're matching up with what the order was.
Lead Novotny.
Thank you, Chair. I agree and recommend a green vote.
All right, any closing comments? Chair Fischer.
No, I know you're short on time. Thank you. I ask for your support of the green vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to our testifiers as well. I'll renew the motion that House File 3063 as amended be placed on the general register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Next, we have Representative Kozlowski. Are you here? Oh, there you are. All right. House File 4417. I will move to lay over House File 4417. And as you're coming down to the table, I will also move the A2 amendment. And Representative Kozlowski, if you can tell us about the A2 amendment, please. Welcome back to the committee. Frequent flyer in public safety these days.
Public safety.
Yeah, please tell us about the A2 amendment.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair Mueller and members of the committee. The author's amendment is for House File 4417 is seeking to bump back the due date of the task force report up from December 15th to January 1st, 2026. And also we're looking to have the task force complete its research by October 15th of 2025 in order to give us that time to really adequately and robustly prepare the report that would be due the following January.
All right, any discussion to the A2 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. All right, we'll do the other amendments after the bill presentation. So please tell us about your bill as amended, Representative Kozlowski.
Excellent. Thank you again, Chair and members. House File 4417 would establish a task force to review the alarming trend of gender-based violence and exploitation that we've heard across many other committees that are really impacting our Latin community, and will provide recommendations to address those root problems. The statistics are really compelling, and my testifiers can describe that in much more detail, but rest assured that 47% of victim survivors of sex and labor exploitation in the U.S. are Latin. I mean, that's outsized to our 20% of the population of the U.S., and we know that there's challenges with underreporting those numbers that then face barriers in seeking supports and justice and so on. And at the same time, though, I want to highlight that Latin people across Minnesota are the youngest and fastest growing population, and that growth is happening outside the metro. And we're in 87 counties, from Wilmer and Long Prairie to Duluth to the Iron Range. We're everywhere. And as someone who has spent my time before the legislature and here at the legislature working to create a world free of violence, I'm particularly excited and proud to be here with Esperanza United and this coalition that's really seeking to go upstream and take a preventative and trauma responsive and culturally affirming approach. And so right now, what this task force and what this coalition is saying, that it's past time for the dedicated resources in that upstream approach to really get at the root of violence before it strikes again. We're here grounded in our community members like Luis Garcia, like Savannah Williams, who were taken far too early and left their babies behind, so that we can usher in that new era of healing and justice and thriving communities. So really quick, just to the bill, again, this would establish that we set forth a task force that's going to provide recommendations to reduce and end that violence and really disrupt the developmental pathways that are facing gender-based violence. And so it'll look to examine the systemic root causes, it'll review why we have disproportionately high levels of violence towards Latin people. It'll look at current methods for tracking data and collecting that, institutional policies and practices, and a host of recommendations that would set us forth on a roadmap to really root out that violence across the state. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our testifiers so they make sure to get a chance to talk about the importance of this bill, and we'd be happy to take questions.
All right, thank you. First, I think we have Rosario de la Torre. All right, please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Of course. Good morning. My name is Rosario de la Torre. I am the Director of Family Advocacy at Esperanza United. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide my testimony in favor of the bill HF 4417 and the creation of a task force on preventing violence against Latina women and girls. Esperanza United is an organization that has served women experiencing gender-based violence since 1982. For over 40 years, our organization has empowered Latina and Latinos to end domestic violence, offering critical services, ranging from offering shelter and safety for survivors to strengthening youth leadership. Today, we are here to ask for your support in Latina women and the communities. Latinas and Latinos have been overlooked in discussions and policy and gender violence. And now more than ever, we need your attention in this issue that we are facing. Women in Minnesota are facing in higher incidences of sexual violence and rape, with an alarming 36% of Latinas in Minnesota reporting sexual violence. That is even more alarming than the large percentage of cases are not reported. And those numbers only represent a very small fraction of the problem we face as Latinos. As the Director of Family Advocacy, I have seen both victories and the ongoing struggles within our Latina community. The barriers we face are numerous. It's the lack of interpretation, isolation, lack of transportation, poverty. Here's where Esperanza United stepped to assist in finding safety, and we work hand to hand with our participants. Our impact is very profound. We touch over 1,000 lives across 286 households just this year. Our methods involve men, women, youth, and gender non-conforming people. In creating a culture of healthy, respectful relationships, building on our successes, we must now turn our focus on expanding the reach to hear more voices. Our community is clear. Talking about gender-based violence and healthy relationships is not just helpful. It is necessary for prevention. So we stand today, and I hope you recognize the urgency of this moment. This multidisciplinary and multi-agency task force will examine the policies, systems, accountability, and prevention efforts, all critical for safety.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop. We're well over 2 minutes, so.
Well, I just asking for your support in Bill HF 4417, and please do not delay our actions. Gracias.
Thank you, Director. Next, we have Sandy Vargas. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. My name is Sandy Vargas, Chair of the Board of Directors of Esperanza United. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony in favor of Bill HF 4417 and the creation of a task force on preventing violence against the Latina community. Esperanza United is a nonprofit organization that began serving women who experienced domestic violence in 1982. And as board chair, my testimony is rooted in our historical commitment to serve the Latina community. I have served the state of Minnesota in many capacities, some of them being leading Hennepin County as the county administrator, and former president of the Minneapolis Foundation. I have had the opportunity to learn firsthand about the barriers and challenges facing Latina survivors, their children, and our communities. Across systems, survivors face language and communication barriers, isolation, poverty, lack of legal status, and violence. Most women suffer in silence and remain invisible to the system. While some supportive services exist, this task force will help us examine and understand the alarming trends we are experiencing today and help us design a more aggressive approach to preventing them. The work of the task force will help us connect with local communities statewide to search stories, experiences from survivors and providers. We'll learn about the experiences of Latinos living in Hennepin County, and they are not the same experiences of people living in Lake of the Woods, for example. We need to work with local communities to be effective with prevention initiatives. At Esperanza United, we've seen personal transformations. In classes facilitated by our prevention team, participants are moved to rethink traditional roles, how they impact family dynamics, and challenge stereotypes. It is this ripple effect that creates lasting changes and reveals the effectiveness of our culturally specific approach. In the voices of our youth and their families, we find a resounding call for action. Invest in community, invest in prevention, and encourage open dialogue on gender-based violence. This bill and the proposed task force will examine our systems of resources and support, promote research that dives into the culturally specific challenges facing our youth, foster prevention initiatives that cultivate lasting, healthy relationships, and ensure professionals are well-trained to support Latina survivors effectively. This bill is important for our whole community's health, well-being, and safety. Let's recognize the steps.
Okay, I'm sorry. I kept. It sounded like you were just finishing up, I wasn't going to cut you up, but we got it. Thank you so much. Sorry, I have to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anybody from the public who wants to testify on this bill? All right, we can move on now to member discussion. We have an amendment first. That's right. All right. So we have the A1 amendment. Who will be offering the A1 amendment? Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Mueller, and I do move the A1 amendment. Thank you, Representative Kozlowski, for this task force. The task force is labeled for Task Force Preventing Violence Against Latina Women, but yet several times, and I read through the bill, it's actually women and girls. So I was wondering if we could actually just, I would hope that you'd find this a friendly amendment, this to update all the times that it just says women, that we could also add women and girls, including the title of the task force. Thank you, Chair.
Representative Kozlowski.
Thank you, Chair, and Representative Mueller for the amendment. And that's actually one of the things that we've been talking about and going through. You know, you also heard us make reference to Latina people, to men, boys, to women and girls and children, as well as gender expansive folks. And so we actually are going to work with our community-based coalition, since this bill would be laid over, to bring back a title that would be reflective of the full and rich and diverse community. And so would look forward to working with you to make sure that we're aligned, but would just ask members to vote no, just because we'd like to have the agency and make sure that community determines that title. And
Further discussion on the A1 amendment? All right. Closing remarks, Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. And if I'm going to be confused with anyone, I might as well be confused with you. I would say that while I appreciate you wanting to go back and look at the title, I mean, your testifiers were very clear that this was about looking at the violence against women and girls and the shocking statistics that you already talked about violence against, gender-based violence against women and girls. So, you know, I think that what you have presented first here, you're on the right track, and just adding that what you already have in the language already would just be a really simple fix. So I'd ask members to vote yes. Thanks.
All right, those in favor of the A1 amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion does not prevail. All right, we can move on now to member discussion to the bill. Any member discussion to the bill? All right, not seeing, Representative Engen.
Good work. Good work. This is sorely needed, and I'm going to be signing on, so thank you.
All right, any further member comments? I saw a thumbs up, but that was not to me. Okay. Representative Kozlowski, closing remarks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to close in saying that, something that my Tia often reminds me and our community reminds us, that we're the people of hope. And for a long time, we've had the audacity to hope for a good life, a beautiful life, a future where our kids can thrive. And I think right now, with the opportunity to bring forward this task force and have it included in an omnibus bill is a signal to our community that all the efforts that we put towards visibility, towards parity, towards equity in Minnesota, in honoring us as educators and entrepreneurs and policymakers and culture bearers would mean nothing if visibility means nothing if we don't have safety. And so we just ask for your support in bringing forward this task force to complement the work that's already been done and brought forward in tackling violence for all Minnesotans, and really appreciate your consideration.
All right, I'll renew the motion and lay over House File 4417 as amended. Thank you. Thanks to your testifiers as well. Next up, we have House File 4118. It's a Representative Hanson bill. I will move that House File 4118 be placed on the General Register. I'll also move the A1 amendment. I think Representative Hanson's here. Oh, there you are. All right. Welcome to our committee. If you want to explain the A1 amendment, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Moeller, and thank you, committee members. The amendment gets the bill in the shape that I would like, narrows the scope down just a touch to make sure that this bill is feasible for this year. There's more committee stops that the other two pieces would have to go to. So in the sake of time and in the era of the legislature that we're in, I'm just keeping this in the scope of your committee.
All right, any discussion to the A1 amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The A1 amendment is adopted. All right, your bill is now before us. Please tell us about your bill as amended.
Thank you, Chair Moeller and members. As amended, House File 4118 is the first of several steps to begin to remove the term excited delirium from statute and in autopsies. Today's bill will ensure that no continuing education credits, tuition reimbursement, or trainings of law enforcement officers will continue to include this term. For those unfamiliar with the term, I will do my best to both respect your time and explain it at a very high level, though I do encourage members to review the letters and the history of this term to fully grasp why we are taking this first step today. The term excited delirium appeared out of thin air in Florida in the 1980s, and it has no basis in science, no functional meaning in medicine, and no clear diagnostic criteria nor symptomology. Even though this first appeared in the 1980s, the intent behind the origins of this term were and are today indisputably rooted in anti-Black racism, as we can see from medical and autopsy records from around the nation for decades. Today, the existence of this term in our statute and vernacular insinuates that the excited delirium is an actual condition or an actual cause of death. As we continue to work to remove this term from health and autopsy statutes, today's bill will be step 1 of 3 to remove this term, at least for now, from law enforcement training and reimbursable courses or CEUs, and will modernize our statutes to remove at least one of the references to this made-up medical condition.
All right, thank you. And I believe you have one testifier here. So Michelle Gross, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Mueller and committee members. My name is Michelle Gross, and I am the president of the organization Communities United Against Police Brutality, as well as the chair of the Mental Health Work Group. You have already received written testimony and background on the problematic history and lack of scientific validity of the term excited delirium and its progeny. There is no standard set of symptoms, and not a single credible medical association accepts excited delirium as a legitimate diagnosis. The term was latched onto by law enforcement to explain deaths in their custody, particularly ones involving prone restraint, neck restraint, hobble tying, or other positions that restrict respiration. It was later used to explain away taser deaths. For the last several years, Minnesota law enforcement officers have been taught to recognize so-called excited delirium, and we're told that this condition causes people to have superhuman strength and made them impervious to pain and thus dangerous. In reality, the term has frequently been applied to African-American men or other people of color simply for expressing their fear or frustration during encounters with law enforcement. I want to remind you about a bit of our local history as to how this unscientific term has been used to harm our communities. In 2018, we learned that Minneapolis police were deciding that certain people, especially large African-American men, were exhibiting excited delirium, and they were directing paramedics to administer an anesthesia drug known as ketamine. There were several things, of course, wrong with this situation, not the least of which is that cops aren't doctors and shouldn't be diagnosing anybody with anything. But more, they should not be directing how it is supposedly going to be treated. Secondly, ketamine is a dangerous drug that leads to respiratory distress and intubation in 57% of people for whom it is administered in a pre-hospital setting. In other words, Minneapolis police were putting people at risk for serious complications by diagnosing them with a phony condition and demanding that they be treated for it. And they were doing it because that's what they were trained to do. This bill would put an end to training law enforcement officers to detect or diagnose what we now know is a phony condition and would help to safeguard the community from dangerous treatments for it. California and other states have banned the use of the term excited delirium, along with law enforcement training about it. I ask your support to make Minnesota the next state to take this important step. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public who wish to testify in this bill? All right, I'm not seeing any, so we can move on to member discussion. Anybody? No? All right.
Oh, wait.
Oh, I can't.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Thought somebody else was going to
Yep.
jump in first.
Lead Novotny.
Chair Moeller, Representative Hanson. As I was listening to the testifier, I was looking at my hand, and if the sun gets right, I can still see the scars from the different ones, and I can remember when I got the scars, and that was before there was a term to describe a broad spectrum of behavior. Could have been a medical condition, could have been a psychiatric condition, could have been a drug-induced or alcohol-induced condition that caused them to not be present mentally when this was going on. We didn't have a name for it any more than when I started out in the 80s, we didn't have a term for horizontal gaze nystagmus, and I could see that, you know, growing up in a truck, working in a truck stop and dealing with drunks all my high school and college years, I could tell when somebody was drunk by the way their eyes worked. And then later on, somebody came up with the term horizontal gaze nystagmus to describe the involuntary movements of the eye. And since I live in Realville, I just have a question for the author. And since we're from Minnesota, I'm just going to throw out a suggestion. Are we going to go with, will we refer to it as a condition or a person acting in a way formerly known as excited delirium? What are we going to call it? How are you going to dispatch it? As I used some of my own advice, I went to Google and YouTube last night. I typed in changing excited delirium laws, and man, there's a bunch of videos. As far as phony conditions, I don't know how many phony conditions were involved with the multiple videos I've seen of people that were mostly, I would guess, drug overdosed, that were standing out in the middle of the street, usually naked because their bodies are overheating because they're overdosing. So my question is, where do we go from here? You can change the name, you can whitewash the phenomenon. Do I agree? Is it, should it ever occur on a coroner's report? No. I mean, that's unknown. That's not a medical diagnosis, but it's a response that people are in. So tell me, when I went to these calls and dealt with them, none of which I can ever recall in 33 years was a person of color, what was it if it was fake? And how should the people that replaced me when I retired, how should they deal with this person that is, you know, laying in the middle of a road, banging their head on the tar? Should we give them training to, you know, indicate that, hey, grab a blanket, put a blanket under their head? so they don't bang their head on the tar? Or should we just pretend it doesn't exist and plug our eyes and close our eyes, plug our ears, and go la la la? This isn't happening. It is happening. For those of us from Realville, I don't know what you're solving, but what will we call it?
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Chair Moeller, and thank you, Lead Novotny. I'm going to do my best to address your question here. I'm not in law enforcement. I'm not in medical practice. I am not qualified to label what should be the future term. My bill before us today, just simply with what I understand post-board support, was to just simply remove this term from continuing education credits, from reimbursement for those, and in future training, similar to what we've done with warrior training, is kind of the comparison. I see your reaction. Happy to respond again if you would like. But I don't have an answer for you of what your profession should call something you're encountering. I would really leave that to your profession to make that determination with the most due respect, because I think staying in my lane matters a whole lot. And in this term, this is not a term that is recognized by any medical professionals. It's not actually even trained on, from my understanding at this point with current law enforcement. It's not really found that often in continuing education courses anymore. It has, for lack of a better word, made itself irrelevant, and we're just updating statute to also reflect that in just the training piece and the ongoing piece. I agree with you that it should be removed from autopsies, and I would love to partner up and get that removed from that next session when we have more time than we do this year. And then additionally, removing it from the use in health terms as a diagnostic criteria, as like some kind of a medical terminology. But in terms of the bill as amended before us today, is simply just removing these terms, like I said, that have, through the course of time, made themselves irrelevant.
Lead Novotny.
Chair Moeller, Representative Hanson, I guess if you haven't sensed it, it's just a little bit of frustration of all the things that need to be fixed. We've got all these crimes and carjackings and murders to the point where we don't even mention them anymore. And we're going to just change a phrase on something that some people say is phony condition that my experience isn't. So it seems like we're rearranging the deck chairs on a ship that's sinking, and that might be some of the frustration that I'm unfortunately releasing at you, Representative Hanson. But I'm going to recommend a no vote on this just because we've got so many other important things to do, and I'm happy that you got your bill heard because I didn't get any. So thank you.
And before we move to closing comments, I just wanted to point out the NAMI letter that's in member packets. It says excited delirium is not recognized as a diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders or the World Health Organization's International Classification of Diseases. Moreover, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Emergency Medicine, and the National Association of Medical Examiners have all come out in the last several years stating they do not recognize it as a diagnosis. So I think what you could say, if there's a call, is it's a person in crisis, or you could describe the behavior that the person's experiencing. We're just saying there's no space in Minnesota for training on excited delirium to have that not allow posts to allow posts to not recognize any training on a diagnosis that doesn't exist. It's our understanding, talking to the post board, that they don't even see that much anymore or requested it. And so there's really no harm in putting it in law to make sure that we don't sort of slip back in to a pattern of saying that something exists as excited delirium when it really isn't recognized anywhere. So any closing comments?
Thank you, Chair Moeller, and thank you, committee members, for the discussion. I'm happy to continue the work on this as time goes on, and looking forward to the support to remove this from autopsy and health records in coming years.
All right, I will renew the motion that House File 4118 as amended be placed on the general register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion prevails. All right, the next bill on the agenda is Representative Pelowski's bill, House File 4723. I will move that House File 4723 be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
53.
Oh, sorry, I have 23 on my notes. Sorry about that. So let me just say that again. House File 4753, and I will move that House File 4753 be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Chair Pelowski, welcome to the committee. Please tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the chair. This has been an ongoing discussion with the chair and I for the past year. If you turn to page 2 of the bill on lines 2.14, 2.15, this bill would finally stabilize the funding of the disaster contingency account. The disaster contingency account was created in Chapter 12B in 2014 as a result of a 2012 Legislative Auditor's Report of Chapter 12A, which was created in 2008. Chapters 12A and 12B are the two statutes by which we handle either a presidential declaration of a disaster in this state or a gubernatorial declaration of a disaster in this state. Chapter 12B came about when the legislative auditor reviewed Chapter 12A, and the disasters were coming at us so fast that they were not all at the presidential level, that a new statute had to be created. That was 12B, and the disaster contingency account created. One of the problems with disasters, they don't come at us during session. They're more than likely to come at us when we are out of session, which means we have to have a special session. And everyone here knows there is nothing special about a special session. So when the disasters hit, we need to get aid to those areas immediately. And the disaster contingency account would allow that to occur. In 2007, when southeastern Minnesota, which is still the largest disaster in the history of the state, had 18 inches of rain in one night in late August, it took several weeks before a special session was called. You can't wait several weeks. We need to get aid to these areas immediately. This account would say that the account would be stabilized at $50 million, assuming that there was a surplus. And the history of this account, and Madam Chair, you don't have the time for me to go over the history of this account, but let's just say it's been curiously underfunded since it was created. And with that, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee discussion. Oh, I didn't call for public testimony either yet. Was there anybody from the public who wishes to testify? All right, not seeing any. So we can move on to member discussion. Not seeing anybody. Nope, on this bill either. I will just say, Chair Pelowski, thank you so much for this. I think it really does serve an important need and doesn't, it excludes it from things getting caught up in the politics of session and where money's going and all of that. And so I think this really serves an important need. Appreciate all of your work on this issue over the years as well. Any closing remarks?
Madam Chair, my only closing remarks would be, we have had a remarkable non-existent winter, which means there will probably not be flooding. What I dread now are the rains to come and the storms that will be with the rains, and we will likely not be in session. So this account now is sitting at $26 million. It was at $40 million last session when we put it in. $26 million goes by awfully fast when a disaster hits. So thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you. I'll renew the motion that House File 4753 be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, next up we have Chair Becker-Finn with House File 4244. Yep. And I believe your motion, Chair Becker-Finn, is to lay over House File 4244. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
All right, your bill is before us. I don't think there's an amendment, is there?
Nope.
All right, please tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House File 4244 is pretty straightforward. It just changes the percentages of funds that would be distributed from the savings that we will incur when the MRRA goes into effect. The folks from Violence Free Minnesota reached out to me in the interim due to changes in funding at the federal level. Many of us are aware that Crime Victim Services is not funded at the level that we really need it to be. And so this was kind of a creative way to set up a way to have more funds going to victim services. So folks will remember the way that the MRRA was constructed is that 25% of it was supposed to go to the general fund and 25% of it was supposed to go to Crime Victim Services. This would change that, so the 25 that had been set aside for the general fund would be going to crime victim services. So it's kind of a way to set up an ongoing funding for this issue that we talk about every year with needing funding for crime victim services. I have talked to the Department of Corrections, and they are okay with this change. And I believe I have one testifier.
All right, yep. Joel Carlson is here. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Joel Carlson, I'm here on behalf of Violence Free Minnesota, an organization that I've represented since 1999 here at the Capitol. I've had a chance to meet with almost all of you, I believe, about the need for adequate funding for crime victim services and domestic abuse advocacy programs. That helps all of our justice partners. This is one mechanism to help that. It's long-term. I've read the fiscal note. There's not going to be any savings until at least 2025. So we're still putting in a big plug for Chair Moeller's bill to provide funding in this biennium. But this is one avenue that we can utilize, and we'd appreciate your support for this change.
Any members of the public who wish to testify on this bill? All right, not seeing any, we will move on to member discussion. All right, Lead Novotny.
I just have a quick question. Chair Becker-Finn, is there going to be a Senate companion bill, or should we anticipate that coming?
Chair Becker-Finn.
I am not a senator and cannot speak for the Senate and what they do, but the goal is that we're trying to move this forward, so I can update you when we have that information.
And Mr. Carlson took a seat again, so maybe you have an update for us. Go ahead.
Madam Chair and Representative Novotny, the Senate jackets have been transmitted to Senator Gustafson. It should be on Wednesday's introductions. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
Lead
you.
Novotny. All right. Any further member discussion? I just want to thank you for bringing this. We're always talking about thinking creatively, especially about how to fund long-term victim services. It's so important. They're continuing to lose those federal dollars. So I appreciate the creative thinking with this bill, and thank you for bringing it forward. Any closing remarks?
Senate gonna Senate, but I think it's a good bill and appreciate members' support.
All right, Representative Becker-Finn renews the motion that House File 4244 be laid over. And members, that is it for today's agenda. I don't even know what day it is. We have lots of hearings, so we will.
We're with you every day.
It's only Tuesday, so we will see you again soon. With that, we are adjourned.
Every day this